Today I'd like to take you through my experience minting and selling my first NFT. Plus, I'll share some best practices for photographers to find success in this compelling new space. Lindsay Adler here, and I am very excited to announce that I've sold my very first piece of NFT art since first sharing the video on this topic. Now I'm going to take you through what the process looked like, what I learned, and then how I made the decisions as I went through minting the piece. Now, after I share my first-person insights, I'm going to share a list of 10 best practices for photographers that are interested in creating and selling their work as NFTs. Now, over the last few weeks, I've been interviewing photographers who have found success selling their work as NFTs, and I put together a list of common thoughts and tips from these fellow artists. Now, by the way, if you are watching this video and thinking, what the heck are NFTs? Or sounds cool, how do I create one? Well, you're going to want to pause, back up, and start by watching the first 2 videos in this series listed in the description below. And if you are all caught up, let's just jump into my experience. I began the process of selling my first NFT by trying to look for other photographers who are already selling their work. And I found several female photographers, in fact, a couple that I knew personally, that seemed to have cracked the code. They were regularly selling their pieces for thousands of dollars. So I began by looking at the platforms that they were already on. And there were 2 marketplaces that seemed to stand out: Foundation and Super Rare. Now, I decided to go with Foundation because all of their pieces are one-of-one editions, in other words, one of a kind. Plus, I respected the community of artists that they had built. In fact, this marketplace is actually curated by artists, meaning that when an artist sells one of their pieces, they're provided with invites that they can then pass on to their favorite artists and invite them to the community. Thankfully, a talented photographer, who I put in the description, was kind enough to offer me an invite after I spent about a week begging the universe to send me one. Now, after accepting the invite, I connected my MetaMask account to Foundation and I began filling out my profile, including my bio. Now, for my bio, I wanted to emphasize the elements about myself and my art that make me unique. And I wanted to stress the overarching themes of my work. In the best practice section that I'm going to be covering later, I share how important it is to talk about yourself, your process, your vision, and to be authentic. Now, this is true, honestly, for any artist, but it is extremely important for NFT art. Now, for my first NFT, I selected a piece called Blossom, and I actually created this cinematograph, which is, by the way, a still with motion, several years ago, and it had previously only existed as a looping image on my portfolio. And I felt like this piece really represented my artwork, both stylistically and thematically. It really represents who I am. The animation also was helpful because it made the piece unique to the digital space. Now, I want to pause for a moment and just mention that even though I went for an animated piece, there are certainly photographers that are selling still images, so don't feel like it has to be animated. And when it came to minting the artwork, I looked around at other photographers in the space that I felt were at similar experience levels or similar reach as myself, and I decided to set a reserve price of 1 Ethereum, which at the time was a value of about $1,600. And I was shocked because my piece got a bid like in 20 minutes, almost immediately. Now, on Foundation, how it works is that there's a 24-hour auction countdown clock that starts, and over the next 24 hours, I received no additional bids. And I'm not saying I'm disappointed, but I think it proves the point that you just need one person to be interested in your piece and make a sale to that one person. It could be an instant sale, or it could take a few weeks to get someone's attention. And after I sold that piece, I started chatting with the collector who bought it, and we started a conversation through Instagram DMs, and it was so gratifying to talk to someone who appreciated and collected my art. So after a few days, I decided to mint my second piece on Foundation, and my profile, by the way, is in the description below. Now, before I move on, I wanted to point out something about cryptocurrency. So as with any currency, it fluctuates, goes up and down in value. In video number 2 of this series, I discussed how I spent a couple $100s on gas fees, but the value of Ethereum has already gone up enough that I've made more on the appreciation, like the value of the currency, than what I spent on minting. So for this reason, many artists think that the money made from selling NFTs is more of an investment than quick cash. And I'm not giving you any financial advice or anything like that, but I'm sharing my experience. So I'm 1 NFT in, a second one posted, and I'm working on 3 more to be able to drop in the next couple of months. Now, as you can see, I am clearly not claiming to have a ton of sales or a lot of experience behind me, but to better understand the market and the best practices, I reached out to the community and I wanted to chat with experts. My goal was to help other photographers, but selfishly to also help myself figure out what I can be doing better for my future drops. So after my interviews, I was able to assemble 10 best practices for photographers when selling NFTs. Now, these come from about a dozen different sources, and of course things will change, but right now, these are the artists that seem to be navigating these uncharted waters the best, especially in the photographic space when it comes to NFTs. All right, with that, we're going to jump into the list of 10 best practices when you are creating your photographic NFTs. An artist statement explains why and how you make your artwork. So try to make it personal. What is your relationship to the work that you're creating? What is driving your motivation for creating this work? Just because NFT art is digital doesn't mean you shouldn't approach it just like a fine artist. Try to give it some personal insights, something that would allow a collector to better understand your purpose and your creativity. Let them connect with you and understand you better. Now, this type of content can appear in your bio on the marketplace, or you can include some of it in the description of the piece if it's applicable. Does your work have a story? What is the individual piece or the collection trying to say? Is there a greater truth it's revealing? Does it tell something about your insights into the world? Is it about a personal struggle? Is it about a new way to look at a commonplace topic? Your piece should have a story, and if there's some personal element, this is even better. Can you do something that hasn't been done a billion times before? There's a lot of mimicry and repetition in both art and NFT art, but can you add something different to the conversation? Can you find an approach, or maybe it's a technique or something that's exciting and new? A collector may find value in the unusual approach you take rather than just trying to emulate what already is being sold by a million other artists. This is, again, not new to or specific to NFT art, but it's important to keep in mind, as this is always applicable, especially when you're trying to have a recognizable style or get attention for your uniqueness. In other words, don't just look at what's selling, try to do the same thing, right? Like, be different, be authentic to yourself. When you create a piece of art, you can't just keep it to yourself. People find your work when you engage with them. So first, start by engaging with collectors in the marketplace you've selected. So for example, sometimes when you are on a specific marketplace, you can actually follow those collectors on a platform and they can see who follows them. Furthermore, pretty much all of these marketplaces have a Discord channel, and fundamentally this is like a really robust chat app. And so if you download the app, you join the discussion, you can chat directly with these collectors or introduce yourself to the community, start up conversations, things like that. Now, according to Tina Eisen, Twitter is a great platform to get your NFT drops seen by potential collectors. So make sure that you dust off your Twitter handle and get networking with these very helpful and welcoming community. Now, try following engaging with collectors who have pieces that are similar to what you create, maybe similar subject matter. Start conversations, comment on their posts, try to get on their radar, just get noticed. Consider following NFT journalists who talk about the art or the changes in the industry. Another great place to talk about NFTs, maybe to get noticed, is Clubhouse. There are so many NFT groups there and artists and collectors. Try following Silva and Thank You X on Clubhouse and give a listen to some of these groups. Part of being in a community is being engaged. Be part of the community. A great way to do this and a great way to encourage others to share your art is for you to share the artwork of others, especially those NFT artists that you respect. If you're invested in the community, it'll be noticed by those that are collecting in that community. If someone does buy one of your pieces, try to actively maintain that relationship with the collector. I mean, they obviously have an interest in your work and they're obviously willing to invest. So you can not only show appreciation by being connected, but maybe get them interested in a future purchase as well. Photographer Kate Woodman gives the advice that the other important thing with collectors is that once you've sold a piece, maintain that relationship. You know they already like your work, so this gives you a leg up. Now, my first collector bought a piece from me, and I decided to offer them a related piece directly rather than going through the traditional minting and listing process, and they ended up buying it. Consider adding other unlockable content to those who purchased your pieces. So instead of just owning the NFT, you can offer them something else of value. I mean, for example, some people will offer a download of the high-res file for the owner. Maybe they can print it out, or perhaps the ability to reach out for a signed print, or I don't know, some other incentive. An incredible example of this practice is the artist Beeple, who provides a package that contains physical elements for the token. So for example, it includes a physical version of the NFT with a signed numbered titanium backplate, as a certificate of authenticity, a cleaning cloth for the piece, and oddly, even a sample of the artist's hair. You don't need to go that far, but maybe you can sweeten the deal. Make the art offering have even more value if you can offer other incentives beyond just the NFT itself. Don't just put a ton of NFTs out into the world, especially if they're not selling. If you have a lot of unsold inventory, it makes it look like the art has no value. Now, according to Kate Woodman, she says, I would also strongly recommend not having a massive unsold to sold inventory ratio. The art world, whatever form it takes, is about scarcity. If you have more unsold than sold pieces, it doesn't look as desirable to a collector as having a lot of sold art. I would say a good rule of thumb here would be a minimum of 60-40 sold to unsold. On a similar topic, remember that part of what makes art valuable is scarcity, so you should avoid doing huge editions that will never sell. Maybe you're at a certain point of your career where you think you should sell big editions, but usually if they don't sell out, it'll disincentivize people from investing. You don't need to have only one of one editions, but remember the effect that scarcity has on value. You may want to create a larger edition so you can sell your NFTs at a lower price so that maybe your audience or collectors can invest in your piece without a high cost. But here's the thing, it's a balance. While you certainly don't want to price yourself out of the ability of having your work sold, like you don't want to be too expensive, you also don't want to give your work away for nothing either. If you have really early pieces that sell for a really low value, it sets the tone for the rest of your work. Collectors can see what other pieces have sold for, and this may decrease the perceived value. Once again, it's a balancing act. You don't want your pieces to be unreasonably high that prevents people from bidding on them in the beginning, but you don't want them to be too low so that it hurts you in the long run. So there you have it. Best practices to consider as you make your first NFTs. Now, in other words, don't just create something pretty, list it, and hope it sells. Be thoughtful about your work and your purpose. Position yourself correctly, and then engage with the community. I hope you have found these tips helpful as you navigate this new world, and I've found them helpful myself. I've included the links below to many of my favorite photographers currently creating in the NFT space, several of which gave me pointers and insights for this content. Now, please, I invite you to comment below and list any photographers creating NFTs that you see regularly selling pieces, or maybe just an artist that you admire and you want to promote. I'd love to see who's out there and what platforms they're on and the types of pieces they're selling and even what they're doing to promote their work. Remember, it's about engaging and sharing, and you can share here. So be sure to check out the links in the description below for other helpful resources. And of course, when you're creating your NFTs, be sure to visit Adorama.com for any of your gear needs. See you next time.